Biden says a Russian invasion of Ukraine would hurt Americans. Here is how, with 150,000 Russian troops circling Ukraine's borders and U.S. officials warning that a major invasion could take place any day, President Biden has signaled to the American public that it too may feel effects if Russia chooses to invade. If Russia decides to invade, that would also have consequences here at home. But the American people understand that defending democracy and liberty is never without cost, President Biden said in a speech Tuesday. I will not pretend this will be painless. Russia says it is not preparing to invade, and it is not a certainty that Russian President Vladimir Putin will decide to do so. World leaders are continuing diplomatic talks this week in a high-stakes effort to avoid that outcome. Still, the possibility of an invasion has raised the specter of consequences: sanctions, countersanctions, energy supply issues, a flood of refugees that would be felt far beyond Ukraine's borders. Here is what to know. The US has promised severe sanctions if Russia invades, and Russia could retaliate if Russia proceeds. We will rally the world and oppose its aggression. The United States and our allies and partners around the world are ready to impose powerful sanctions and export controls, Biden said Tuesday. Those sanctions could include restrictions on major Russian banks that would dramatically affect Russia's ability to conduct international business. Severe U.S. sanctions could drive up prices for everyday Russians or cause Russia's currency or markets to crash. Because the U.S. does not rely much on trade with Russia, it is somewhat insulated from direct consequences. Europe is more directly affected. But certain sectors of the U.S. economy rely on highly specific Russian exports, primarily raw commodities. The premise of sanctions is to hurt the other guy more than you hurt your own interests. But that does not mean there will not be some collateral damage, said Doug Rediker, a partner at International Capital Strategies. Energy prices could soar. Russia is a major exporter of oil and natural gas, especially to Europe. As a result, officials have reportedly shied away from severe sanctions on Russian energy exports. But there are other ways the energy market could be disrupted. For one, Russia could choose to cut off or limit oil and gas exports to Europe as retaliation for sanctions. Nearly 40% of the natural gas used by the European Union comes from Russia, and no European country imports more than Germany, a key ally of the United States. Even if Russia chooses not to limit exports, supplies could still be affected by a conflict in Ukraine because multiple pipelines run through the country, carrying gas from Russia to Europe. They could simply be casualties of a military invasion, Rediker said. Either way, if Europe's natural gas supply is pinched, that could cause energy prices, which have already been climbing, to rise even further. And even though the US imports relatively little oil from Russia, oil prices are set by the global market, meaning local prices could rise anyway. On Tuesday, Biden promised to work with Congress to address the impact of prices at the pump. Other industries, from food to cars, might also be hurt. Russia is a major exporter of rare earth minerals and heavy metals, such as titanium used in airplanes. Russia supplies about a third of the world's palladium, a rare metal used in catalytic converters, and its price has soared in recent weeks over fears of a conflict. And a major conflict in Ukraine would disrupt Ukrainian industries too. Ukraine is a major source of neon, which is used in manufacturing semiconductors. As a result, U.S. officials have warned various sectors to brace for supply chain disruptions, including the semiconductor and aerospace industries. Fertilizer is produced in major quantities in both Ukraine and Russia. Disruptions to those exports would mostly affect agriculture in Europe, but food prices around the world could rise as a result. The shock to international stability could hit global markets beyond sanctions and countersanctions. Global financial markets would likely have a negative reaction to a European military invasion of a scale not seen since World War II. Americans with exposure to the stock market, like those with 401ks and other retirement accounts, could feel an effect, though it would most likely be short-term. Markets are fundamentally not prepared for a land war in Europe in the 21st century, Rediker said. It is something people just have not contemplated. The U.S. stock market has already been unusually volatile in recent weeks, churning over inflation, possible moves by the Federal Reserve and the possible conflict in Ukraine. Historically, the market has bounced back relatively quickly after geopolitical events. That is what is most likely today too, analysts say. But if a major Russian invasion and subsequent